Hey guys, it's Vicky, and today I am here to talk about all the books I read in March that were not middle grade books. So I did my middle grade March wrap up. I read 6 books for middle grade March, and I read 6 books that were not middle grade. So I read 12 books in March, which is a record for me. I have never read that many books in a month, so March was a fabulous month. It was really good, and I'm really excited to talk about the books that I have here. So the first book that I completed in March was one that I had started in February, and that is Heartless by Marissa Meyer. This is a retelling of the Queen of Hearts story from Alice in Wonderland. It kind of gives you like her backstory before she became the off with her head crazy queen that we all know and love. And so in this one, I think things I enjoyed the most were the nods that Marissa Meyer gave to the original story. Little tidbits here and there that really served the story well. She did a great job of tying all of that together. I think my biggest complaint about this book was that it was a little bit slow paced. I felt like, especially the first half of the book, I just was having a hard time getting into it, and I just was feeling like nothing was happening. So the pacing was a little bit slow, and the love story in here I wasn't totally feeling, unfortunately. So I would definitely say, though, if you love Alice in Wonderland, definitely check this book out because it is a lot of fun. And yeah, I gave it 3 out of 5 stars. Next up, I completed a reread. It was my March jar challenge, was to do a reread, so I reread The Outsiders by S.E. Hinton. I hadn't read this book since I was about 13, I want to say, and I loved this book just as much this time around as I did the first time I read it. This is a book about a group of friends, some young boys, that told through the eyes of one of them, Pony Boy. And it's just about kind of their life as greasers and how they clash with this other social group called the Socias. And some stuff happens that I don't want to say because that would be spoilery. But some stuff happens and they have to kind of deal with the repercussions of that event. So yeah, very vague, sorry. But basically I adored this book. I really love Pony Boy's voice. And it amazes me that S.E. Hinton wrote this book at, I believe she was 16 years old when she wrote this book, and that is amazing to me because the writing is so good. Pony Boy's narrative just sucks you right in. I was just completely engaged from the first sentence. I just loved this book. I loved the characters. I know as a kid, my favorite characters were Pony Boy and Soda Pop, who I still love Soda. He was just so great. But I think this time around, maybe because I'm an adult now, I definitely identified a lot with Derry, Pony Boy's older brother, who's kind of their caregiver, parent, whatever you want to call him. Basically, he's like the main adult of the group. And so I definitely identified with him and like his viewpoints, his struggles and whatnot. But yes, this book is fabulous. It's a classic that I think most people should read and would enjoy because it just touches on things like social class, the idea of people being judged by what they look like, where they live, you know, the neighborhood they come from, and how sometimes those views can definitely be wrong. And that we shouldn't really judge people based on those kinds of things. People are a lot more complex than you think they are. And obviously it also touches a lot on friendship. The friendships in this book are strong. And yes, I love this book. Gave it 5 stars. Go check it out if you haven't. Next up, I completed an audiobook, and that was Where the Crawdads Sing by Delia Owens. This was a very hyped up book on like Instagram and stuff. And yeah, we're going to get into some unpopular opinions because this book didn't really do it for me. Honestly, if I hadn't been listening to the audiobook, I'm not sure I would have completed the book. So basically the synopsis is it's a coming-of-age story about a young girl named Kaya. She's growing up in this marshy area of I can't remember if it's North Carolina or South Carolina, one of the Carolinas, in the 50s and 60s. And she grows up very isolated and alone. And her community really like misunderstands her and treats her pretty poorly. So I think in the beginning, I really loved the writing. I thought the writing was really good. I loved the setting. It took place in the 50s and 60s. And the setting, the way that Delia Owens wrote the marsh and stuff, it sounded just beautiful. Unfortunately, I thought that the story itself, the plot, was a little bit boring after a while. I started to get kind of bored. And then a romance kind of happens, and I was really not feeling the romance. Didn't care about that at all. But then later in the book, it kind of got a little more interesting again, because there's this whole courtroom drama scene that is very much reminded me in many ways of To Kill a Mockingbird, that kind of whole scene in To Kill a Mockingbird. So it kind of perked back up again, and then the ending happened, and the ending was just like, nah, I just did not like the way it ended. The very last, you know, few pages or whatever, I was like, no. So the book was very up and down for me. Like I said, I really liked the writing and the setting. I definitely had some problems with the book. It just didn't resonate with me. So, I know most people love this book. I just am not one of those people. I gave it 3 stars. I still gave it 3 stars because I feel like the writing was that good. And I would love to see what else Delia Owens comes up with. But for me, the plot was just kind of weak. The romance was meh, and I just didn't really care for that part. So 3 out of 5 stars. Yeah, check it out if you want to. I guess I don't want to not recommend it to people, but to me the hype just wasn't real for that book. Next up, I read another like anticipated release for 2019, and that was On the Come Up by Angie Thomas. This was one that I was even really excited about because I read Angie Thomas's debut, The Hate U Give, when it came out a couple years ago, and I really, really enjoyed that book. So I was really looking forward to this one. This one centers around a girl named Bree who has high ambitions to become a famous rapper. And her father was an up-and-coming rapper before he was shot and killed. And so she kind of has this expectation, I guess. She's known partly because of her father. And her family, though, unfortunately, is living in a going through a difficult time financially. And so Bree really wants to be a rapper because she like genuinely loves it, but then she also feels like she needs to become a rapper to like help pull her family out of their financial issues. And so it brings on all these kinds of challenges and things like that. So overall, I enjoyed this book. I loved the raps because there's parts in this book where, you know, you actually see the raps that Bree is writing and performing, and they're really good. And I'm not really one who, I don't really listen to rap, but I really loved that part. And I actually wish that the book had had more instances of her, kind of the writing process, how she would come up with her rhymes and that whole kind of thing. That was like probably my favorite part about the book. I guess my biggest issue with this one was I felt like Bree as a character just wasn't as likable. She's a teenager, you know, so she makes a lot of stupid choices in the book, and she's downright like mean to her family at times and her friends. And I know it, like, that's what teenagers do. I get it. And typically I identify with that kind of behavior as a teen. But for some reason in this, I wasn't really like as forgiving, I guess. And I feel like by the end of the book, I didn't feel like Bree had really grown as much as I had hoped she would. So initially, like when I first finished this book, I gave it 3 stars because of Bree mostly. Because by the end of the book, she kind of irritated me, to be honest. But then once I've been away from it for a while, I kind of thought, no, this book is actually a pretty important book. It's a good book, and so I upped my rating to a 4. Because, I mean, it touches on, just like in The Hate You Give, it touches on issues that need to be talked about, and Angie Thomas presents them in this young, this young adult novel in a way that teenagers can understand, and it gives people like Bree, and others like in her community in this book, it gives people like her in real life, a voice and someone that they can relate to and understand. So overall, I rated it higher because of I think the cultural significance of the book, because it obviously talks about racism in here. It talks about white privilege. Obviously, it talks about socioeconomic class and things like that. So, I mean, there's definitely a lot going on in here, a lot more going on than just like, oh, this girl wants to be a rapper. So, even though she was a brat. So that's why I upped the rating to a 4. And I would say if you enjoyed The Hate You Give, definitely check this out, because it's definitely worth the read. And yeah, again, the next time Angie Thomas comes out with a book, I will definitely be checking it out. My next March read was another audiobook, and that one was Elevation by Stephen King, his latest release. I really enjoyed the audiobook, first of all, because Stephen King himself narrated it, and I like his voice. I like I like listening to audiobooks that are narrated by the author, because you feel like they're reading it exactly how they want it to sound, you know what I mean? And even like the way he kind of voices some of the characters and stuff, I thought he did a good job. I was happy with it. So basically, though, this is a short little story about a guy who has this strange thing going on. He is losing weight rapidly, but he doesn't look like he's losing weight. Like, he looks like he weighs exactly the same as he's always weighed, but he's actually a lot lighter. I know that sounds kind of weird. It is kind of a weird concept, but it's about that, but then it's also about this lesbian couple that moves into his community, and they open a restaurant, and people in the community are not happy about it because they're lesbians. And so it deals with the prejudices of that, and also this strange condition that the main character Scott has. So I think that overall, I'm not sure why Stephen King released this book on its own. I think it may have served better in a collection. I don't know. I don't know why he released it by itself, but there it is, whatever. I liked the mixture of the supernatural stuff and this like kind of social commentary that he was making, and the themes explored within that, having to do with tolerance, acceptance, and also with being quick to judge, with being making assumptions and being very kind of close-minded. But overall, the main like theme of the book is acceptance and being open and kind to people in your community, I think, was what I got from it the most. Now, was it a fantastic story, a mind-blowing story? No, not really. It was fine. It was entertaining. It was good. I didn't hate it, but it wasn't like amazing. So I gave it 3 out of 5 stars. And then I finished off the month by reading a dark mystery thriller, which was really nice because I had read a lot of like lighthearted, nice kind of middle grade books, and I needed something dark. So I finished off the month with Sworn to Silence by Linda Castillo. This is the first in a series that Linda Castillo has written called the Kate Burkholder series, and it's because it centers around a chief of police detective named Kate Burkholder. And in this one, she lives in a community that is Amish and English, and so there's obviously already some tension and kind of clashing at times within this community, and then this horrible murder happens, this very grisly murder that is very reminiscent of some murders that happened previously, like I think it was 15 or 16 years in the past. And it digs up some stuff for Kate also, because she was a teenager at that time, and she was part of the Amish community at that time, and has since left the Amish community and went on to become a police officer and now a detective. And so she is kind of dealing with this case, kind of seeing both sides of it, you know, kind of her Amish side is there and also her English side, and it was a really good murder mystery. I loved the complexity of Kate, how she, despite not being, you know, despite being very happy with the choices that she made in her life, she was also there was also like a lot of just emotion behind her, and the way that she still felt this like attachment to the Amish community because it was such a huge part of her life up until she left it. And I learned a little bit about it too because I know nothing about the Amish, really. I mean, nothing. So it was interesting to read about that and how the two cultures differ, but they're like within the same community, you know? So it was really interesting. I loved the kind of the twists that the book took. I thought I did not guess who the killer was. I thought that the darkness of the book was really good. It was very dark, very just violent. The deaths in this book, the killer in this book was a bad person, and they did some bad stuff. And I also loved that the setting, in terms of that it was set in the wintertime. I almost wish I had read this a little bit earlier in wintertime, because it was like the perfect book to read for winter. So if, you know, this coming winter you're looking for a good book set in wintertime to read, definitely read this one, because it's like perfect for that. So yeah, I really enjoyed this. I thought that the pacing was great. I didn't want to put the book down. It kind of had everything going for it. I think that Kate Burkholder is a really interesting character, and I definitely want to see what happens as the series goes on. I know there are a lot of books in this series, so I have a lot of catching up to do, but yeah, I'm really looking forward to diving more into this series. Oh, and I gave the book 4 out of 5 stars. Alright guys, so those are the books that I read in March that were not middle grade books. So yeah, I had a very good reading month, very successful. I'm very proud of myself. Yeah, I read my ass off. So yeah, and April isn't turning out to be much different so far. I am doing a readathon right now, so I'm really pushing myself to read more right now, and I'm just like, it's crazy. But please let me know down below what books you got to in March, or if you've read any of these books, what did you think about them? I would love to chat and share our thoughts. And I hope that March treated you really well. Yeah, and that's all I have. So I hope you guys have a fantastic day, and I will talk to you very soon. Thank you so much for watching. Bye.